You picked the wrong woman tonight.
Get your filthy hands off me, you black nobody. That voice didn't just echo through the alley. It tore through years of pain, through every whispered insult Kensley had ever swallowed, through every side-eye glance she'd endured in silence. She wasn't supposed to hear it. She wasn't even supposed to be there. It was past 1:15 a.m. when Kensley clocked out of her shift at the Bristol, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. Her uniform still spotless, her curls pulled back into a silk wrap, her shoes worn at the soles. Kensley walked with quiet dignity, the kind that came from surviving a world that didn't always see her as worthy. As she cut through the dim alley behind the restaurant, she heard a scream, not just startled, terrified, human. Without thinking, she sprinted toward it. There, near the dumpsters, two men in ski masks were ripping a purse from the hands of an older white woman, frail, trembling, her pearl necklace still swinging from her neck. Kensley didn't hesitate. She didn't scream for help or pull out her phone. She moved, a metal trash lid, a precise swing, and suddenly, it was over. The men ran. The woman collapsed into Kensley's arms. "You didn't have to risk yourself for someone like me," the woman gasped. Kensley looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Ma'am, you looked like you needed help. That's all that matters." And that was it. Kensley helped her to her feet, walked her to a cab, and vanished into the night. No name, no number, no idea what she'd just stepped into. Because that woman? Her name was Margaret Darnell, and she wasn't just anybody. She was the mother of Lucien Darnell, the billionaire CEO behind one of the most powerful tech empires on the East Coast. What Kensley didn't know was that every second of that moment had been captured. Not just on security cameras, but by the eyes of those who don't forget. This is not just a rescue story. This is a black story. And on Hidden Worth, we tell the ones that need to be told. Let's go back to the alley and uncover what really changed that night. The following morning, Lucien Darnell didn't pour his usual cup of black coffee. He didn't glance at the stock ticker or scroll through emails. He was watching footage. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped footage pulled from the alley cam outside his mother's Beacon Hill townhouse. The footage had been flagged overnight by his private security AI keyword detected, attack. Facial recognition failed to identify the woman who intervened, but it was the speed of her reaction that stunned him. Lucien leaned closer. No badge, no weapon, just instinct. She moved like someone who'd seen too much and refused to let anyone else suffer the same. Beside him, his chief of security, Wes, folded his arms. "You think she's part of something?" Lucien didn't answer. Instead, he tapped the pause button. The screen froze on her face just before she turned away. Bright eyes, a flicker of kindness, determination in her jawline. "Find out who she is," Lucien said. "Everything." By noon, Wes had a file. Her name was Kensley Monroe, age 26. Born and raised in Southside Chicago. No known parents. A ward of the state until 18. Graduated from a community college while working nights. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Current job, server at the Bristol. Apartment, 1 bedroom, barely livable, 2 miles from the restaurant. Lucien raised an eyebrow. "That all?" Wes nodded. No affiliations, no red flags, just tough life. And she still ran into that alley. Lucien wasn't impressed. Not yet. "Pull her social," he ordered. Wes hesitated. "Sir, there isn't much. No drama, no clout chasing, just a few quotes about Grace, couple selfies, one with a dog." Lucien scoffed. "Too clean. Nobody's that clean. Maybe she staged it." Wes frowned. "You really think that?" Lucien didn't respond. He just stared at the screen again, replaying the moment where Kensley helped his mother into the taxi, then disappeared without asking for anything. No reward, no recognition, no trace. And that bothered him. Because in Lucien's world, nobody did anything without expecting something in return. Still, he wasn't ready to believe it was all chance. "Reach out," Lucien finally said. "Discreetly. I want to meet her, but she doesn't know it's me." Wes raised an eyebrow. "How do you want to play it?" Lucien's eyes narrowed. "We make her think she won something." And just like that, the first trap was set. But Lucien didn't realize he wasn't the one doing the hunting. Not this time. Kensley had never won anything before. So when the envelope slid through her mailbox, thick paper, gold-trimmed edges, with a letterhead that read, "The Darnell Foundation," her first instinct was that it was junk mail. She was halfway to tossing it when she noticed the name. Her name, printed in sharp, clear letters. She opened it with a mix of suspicion and hope. Inside was a message that seemed too good to be true. "Congratulations. You have been nominated for the Darnell Foundation's Unsung Hero Grant, a private community award recognizing selfless acts of bravery in the greater Boston area. You have been selected as this month's recipient. Please join us at our downtown office for a private acknowledgement and award presentation." She blinked. At first, she thought someone was messing with her. Then she remembered the alley. Maybe someone had seen? Maybe the lady said something? It felt weird, but also strangely hopeful. For once, maybe someone noticed. Maybe good things could happen to people like her too. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't want to jinx it. She put on her best outfit, jeans without holes, a clean white blouse, and a pair of borrowed flats that pinched slightly at the toe. She did her makeup light, kept her curls tied back, and even added a little perfume she'd saved for job interviews. The office was in the heart of downtown. Glass doors, white marble lobby, a receptionist who glanced at her twice before asking, "Are you here to make a delivery?" Kensley smiled politely. "No, I was invited." They made her wait, 20 minutes, then 30. Finally, a man in a slim-fit navy suit led her upstairs to a conference room that felt more like a courtroom. 4 executives sat behind a long glass table. No smiles, no handshakes, just folders. Notes, cold eyes. No award in sight. The man cleared his throat. "Miss Monroe, mind walking us through the events of that night?" Kensley hesitated. "You mean the alley?" He nodded. "Yes, in detail." It didn't take her long to realize this wasn't about celebration. It was about suspicion. She kept her answers short, polite, steady, but their questions, loaded, veiled, almost condescending. One woman even leaned forward and asked, "Why didn't you call the police instead of getting involved? Seems dangerous for someone in your position." "Your position." Kensley stood, calm, graceful. "I thought this was a thank you, but clearly it's not. So, I'll leave you to your notes." They didn't stop her, didn't apologize, just watched. She walked out taller than she walked in. Outside, she breathed deep. Cold air. Cold reality. Some people still didn't want heroes like her. But she'd be damned if that stopped her now. 3 days later, Kensley's phone buzzed nonstop. She didn't have a lot of followers, just family, co-workers, a few church friends. But suddenly, her face was everywhere. Screenshots of her in that alley, blurry but recognizable. Holding up the old woman, leading her to a cab. Somehow, the footage had leaked, not just to the police but to the press. And they ran with it. At first, the headlines were hopeful. "Mystery woman rescues elderly victim in South End. Hero waitress saves life, then disappears." But it didn't take long for the tone to shift. Someone online dug up her name, her job, her race. And then came the comments. Staged, clearly a setup. Why was she even in that alley? Black women always trying to play hero for attention. She probably hired those guys herself. Kensley watched it unfold like a slow-motion train wreck. At first, she tried to ignore it. She muted keywords, turned off notifications, kept her head down at work. But then came the phone calls, first from journalists, then from strangers. One man called her a fraud and told her to go back to the ghetto. Then came the looks from co-workers who used to joke with her in the break room. Now they barely made eye contact. A week later, she was called into the manager's office. "We've decided to let you go," he said flatly. She blinked. "Let me go? Why?" He avoided her eyes. "You've become a distraction. Guests are asking questions. We need to keep the environment neutral." Neutral. Like her existence was somehow political. She left without arguing, without crying. But when she got home that night, the silence of her apartment hit differently. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, her phone lit up with one more notification. Clout chaser waitress exposed. It was a YouTube video, 15 minutes long, a guy in a hoodie dissecting the alley footage like a conspiracy theory. Slowed down clips, circles, arrows, wild claims. And people believed it. Her inbox was full of threats. Even her neighbor, Miss Dottie, who used to wave from her porch, now avoided eye contact. Kensley sat on her floor that night, legs crossed, staring at the ceiling. She had done the right thing. No cameras, no plan, just instinct. And somehow, she was being punished for it. That night, she deleted her social media, turned her phone off, and whispered to no one in particular, "I wish I'd never gone down that alley." But someone was about to remind her why she did. And that person was on her way. Kensley was halfway through reheating a bowl of dollar store ramen when the knock came at the door. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps. But it cut through the silence like thunder. She wasn't expecting anyone. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Most people had either ghosted her or turned against her. She peered through the peephole and froze. An older woman stood there. Long wool coat, navy scarf, perfectly styled silver hair. Her posture was straight, confident, but her face lined with worry told a different story. Kensley cracked the door just a bit. "Miss Monroe?" the woman asked gently. "I hope I'm not intruding." Kensley didn't answer right away. The woman's voice sounded familiar. "I'm Margaret Darnell," she said softly. "You helped me, in the alley." Kensley opened the door a little wider, stunned. "That was you?" Margaret nodded. "May I come in?" The words caught in Kensley's throat. She stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was quiet, clean, but small. Margaret didn't comment. She sat at the edge of the couch like she was in a palace. Kensley remained standing. "I've been trying to find you," Margaret said. "Ever since that night, you vanished before I could thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Kensley said quickly. "I just did what anyone would have done." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You and I both know that's not true." She looked around the room, then back at Kensley. "I've seen what the media's done to you. The things people are saying. It's disgusting. And I want you to know it's not coming from me, or from anyone who knows the truth." Kensley folded her arms, unsure whether to believe it. "I raised a son who built an empire," Margaret continued. "But somewhere along the way, he forgot what real character looks like. You reminded me. That's why I'm here." Margaret reached into her coat and pulled out a check. Kensley didn't even look at the number. "No," she said. "It's not a handout," Margaret replied. "It's a door. But if you won't take the money, maybe take the mic." Kensley tilted her head. "I've arranged a spot on Morning Boston," Margaret said. "A chance for you to speak, your way. No scripts, no filters." Kensley hesitated. "I'm not a speaker," she said. "You're not a fraud either," Margaret said. "So stop letting them tell your story." For the first time in days, Kensley felt something stir in her chest. Not anger. Not fear. Something closer to strength. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Let's tell it right." The studio lights were blinding. Kensley sat in the green room, knees bouncing, her fingers nervously folding the same tissue into tighter and tighter squares. The producers offered her makeup, wardrobe, even a speechwriter. She turned them all down. "I'm not here to perform," she said, "just to speak." When she stepped onto the set of Morning Boston, she could feel every eye on her, not just the cameras, but the audience behind them. Half were curious, a few seemed skeptical. One woman didn't even hide her scowl. Margaret Darnell was already seated beside the host, regal, polished, unbothered. The host smiled for the cameras, voice smooth as butter. "Today on Morning Boston, we welcome Margaret Darnell and," he glanced at his card, "the young woman who saved her life, Miss Kensley Monroe." The audience clapped politely. Kensley forced a smile and took her seat. The first few questions went to Margaret. "How are you feeling? Do you remember what happened that night?" How did it feel being rescued by a stranger? Margaret answered calmly, always circling back to Kensley. Then the host turned to her. Kensley, many people have questioned your motives. Some have even accused you of staging the rescue. What do you say to them? Kensley didn't look at the camera. She looked at the host, then at the audience. I didn't do it for attention, she said. I did it because someone needed help. That's it. A few people nodded. One woman in the back folded her arms tighter. Were you expecting anything in return? Kensley shook her head. I didn't even know who she was. The host raised an eyebrow. And yet, the internet seems to think you orchestrated the whole thing. She smiled softly, but firmly. You ever try to orchestrate a crime in a city alley at 1 a.m. wearing non-slip shoes and carrying leftover breadsticks? The audience laughed, genuine this time. She continued. I grew up being told people like me have to earn every bit of respect we get, so I work, I mind my business, and I help when I can. That night wasn't about race. It wasn't about class. It was about decency, something we've forgotten how to recognize. There was silence. Then clapping. Louder this time. Margaret reached over and squeezed her hand. And somewhere online, someone clipped that exact quote. It hit 1 million views in 2 hours. By nightfall, the hashtags changed. Number Justice for Kensley. Number Let Her Speak. Number Darnell Rescue Truth. Lucien Darnell saw the clip from his penthouse. He didn't say a word. But for the first time, he questioned everything he thought he knew. 3 days after the interview aired, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of Kensley's apartment building. No knock, no cameras, just a white envelope slipped under her door. Inside, a single sheet of heavyweight paper. Private meeting invitation, Darnell Corporation, 27th floor. Thursday, 2 p.m. Ask for Mr. L. Darnell. No explanation, no signature, just the weight of the name. She stared at it for an hour before deciding. On Thursday, Kensley wore the same white blouse from her last interview, pressed clean, and the same pinching flats. Her curls were pulled back, edges laid. Her walk was steady. The Darnell building towered over downtown Boston like it owned the sky. At the security desk, the man didn't even ask her name. He just nodded and pointed to the express elevator. The 27th floor felt like another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows, gray walls, glass doors that whispered open instead of creaking. Lucien Darnell stood at the far end of the room, hands in his pockets, wearing a suit worth more than Kensley's rent for a year. He turned slowly when she entered. Miss Monroe, he said, voice calm but unreadable. Mr. Darnell, she replied. He gestured toward a pair of leather chairs facing the skyline. No cameras, he said. No reporters, just us. She sat, posture straight, chin up. I owe you an apology, Lucien began, for what happened, for how you were treated, and for doubting you. Kensley didn't respond. I watched the broadcast, he continued, and I realized something. Your voice made more impact in 5 minutes than my entire PR team has in 5 years. Still, she waited. I want to offer you a position, he said. Consultant, community engagement, full control, no filters. You'd help guide our outreach programs, rebuild trust, bring in real stories, like yours. She narrowed her eyes. Why me? Because you earned it. Because you said no when others would have begged. Because you spoke truth when silence would have been safer. Kensley leaned back. And what do you get out of it? Lucien didn't flinch. Redemption. She studied him. He seemed tired, not just from work, from years of pretending. I'm not your charity case, she said. I know. I won't be a token. You won't be. She stood. I'll think about it. He nodded. Take your time. She walked to the elevator, shoulders square, head high. And for the first time in weeks, the power didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. Kensley's first day at Darnell Corp didn't come with balloons or welcome signs. It came with stares. Not the kind that said, congratulations. The kind that whispered, why is she here? Her badge read Community Strategy Consultant, but it may as well have read Invader. She was given a glass-walled office, clean, sterile, and far from the executive floor. A quiet exile with a view. But she got to work. She listened. She asked questions. She showed up to meetings no one invited her to. She took notes when others spoke over her. And still she stayed. Because Kensley hadn't come to be liked, she'd come to matter. But someone else had other plans. 3 weeks in, a blog post appeared on an anonymous website. Darnell Empire hires ex-waitress with hidden agenda. It listed her name, her past, her address. It painted her as an opportunist. Said she was dating Lucien. Said she demanded money, or she'd go public. None of it was true. But none of it needed to be. The damage was done. Within hours, the post spread through inboxes and Slack channels inside the company. Snide jokes started floating in the hallways. Coffee breaks went silent when she walked by. Then came the press. A reporter ambushed her outside the building, mic in hand. "Miss Monroe, any comment on the alleged affair with Lucien Darnell?" She didn't answer. She just kept walking. Lucien called a meeting that afternoon. Kensley sat across from him, arms crossed, fire in her eyes. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about who doesn't want me in this building." Lucien nodded. "I know." He handed her a folder. Inside, an email chain. One of his own VPs had started the rumor, a man who'd been gunning for promotion until she arrived. Lucien looked her dead in the eyes. "I'll handle it." But Kensley shook her head. "No," she said. "Let me." The next morning, she walked into the weekly leadership briefing. All the executives were there, including him. She stood in front of the screen and clicked through a slideshow titled, "Who Gets to Belong?" Slide after slide showed real comments from employees of color, women, and hourly staff. Anonymous, but raw. She ended with a quote, "If you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu." Then she closed her laptop. "Now, I'm at the table," she said. "Get used to it." Silence. Then Margaret Darnell, sitting silently at the back of the room, stood and clapped. One by one, others followed. The VP resigned later that week, and for the first time, Kensley didn't feel like a visitor. She felt like a storm. Lucien Darnell was not the kind of man who changed easily. He built his company the way his father built their family name, stone by stone, rule by rule, wall by wall. Vulnerability had never been part of the business plan. But something about Kensley cracked the foundation. It wasn't just her presence in boardrooms or the fire in her voice during strategy sessions. It was the way she held truth like a mirror, forcing people, including Lucien, to look. And one day, he finally did. He sat alone in his office, late at night, long after the building went dark. Kensley's presentation had been 2 weeks ago, but the words still played in his mind. "If you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu." He thought about all the years he sat at the table, while people like Kensley never got invited. He opened a blank document and began to write. A month later, Lucien walked onto a TED stage in New York. No suit jacket, no teleprompter, just him and a quiet audience waiting to see what the billionaire CEO of Darnell Corp had to say. He began with a confession. "I built a business that worked for people who looked like me, and excluded those who didn't." He paused. "I didn't do it on purpose, but that doesn't make it less real." The room held its breath. Then, he told the story. The alley, the rescue, the backlash, the attempt to bury it, and the woman who refused to be buried. He didn't center himself. He didn't spin it into PR. He made it what it was, an apology and a beginning. The video went viral in less than 24 hours. Not because Lucien was a billionaire, but because he owned what most men in power never do: responsibility. Within weeks, Darnell Corp rolled out a new division led by Kensley, Voices of Value, a team focused on systemic inclusion, internal accountability, and elevating stories that had been overlooked for decades. Applications poured in from across the country. Kensley didn't become a mascot, she became a movement. Lucien didn't become a hero, he became a man finally listening. And slowly, the company began to shift. One policy. One hire. One voice at a time. Redemption didn't come in headlines. It came in hard choices, quiet humility, and the courage to change. Lucian had spent his life building walls. Now, he was learning how to build tables. By spring, Kensley had offers coming from every corner. Non-profits, book agents, universities asking her to speak. Even a documentary team showed up with a pitch deck and a boom mic. Everyone wanted to tell her story. But Kensley wasn't interested in being a story. She wanted to be the start of something. So she politely turned most of them down. One afternoon, sitting at a community center in Roxbury, where she used to volunteer before double shifts took over her life, Kensley had an idea. It started as a question. What if the alley didn't have to be the exception? What if girls like her, in neighborhoods like hers, had the tools, the space, the voice, before they needed rescuing? That night, she called Lucian. "I want to build something," she said, "but not under your name, not under Darnell, under mine." Lucian didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need," he said. Weeks later, the paperwork was filed. The press release was short, but powerful. Introducing Light in the Alley, a foundation for young women from underserved communities to reclaim space, rewrite narratives, and rise. Kensley didn't just sit at the head of the table, she built the table herself. The organization offered mentorship, storytelling workshops, legal aid clinics, and crisis response programs, all led by people who'd lived it, not just studied it. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. No media circus. Just 30 chairs, a folding table, and a homemade banner from one of the local high school girls. But when Kensley stepped up to speak, her voice carried further than any headline. "I don't want to be remembered as the girl in the alley," she said. "I want to be remembered as the woman who lit a path out of it." The room went silent. Then applause. And just like that, it began. The first cohort filled up in less than 2 weeks. Girls from Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, Houston, all reaching out. Not to ask for handouts, but to ask how to help. Lucian stayed on as a silent partner, sending funding and resources but always following her lead. Margaret visited once a month. She brought fresh flowers and cookies. Never made a fuss. Just sat in the back and listened. And Kensley? She was exactly where she wanted to be. Not a symbol, not a story. A force. It had been exactly 2 years. 2 years since the alley. 2 years since everything changed. And on this cold November evening, Kensley found herself back there walking past that same rusted dumpster, the same flickering street lamp that still buzzed like it was tired of trying. She wasn't dressed in a uniform this time. No apron, no non-slip shoes, just a soft gray coat, jeans, and boots with soles that felt steady beneath her. The alley wasn't part of her route anymore. But tonight, she felt pulled. Maybe it was memory, maybe it was muscle, maybe it was something more. She paused halfway down, hands tucked into her pockets, when she heard it muffled voices, sharp and scared. She rounded the corner and saw them. 3 girls, teenagers, maybe 16. One of them stood backed up against the wall, clearly outnumbered. The other 2 were laughing, blocking her path. It wasn't a fight, not yet, but it was close. "Hey," Kensley called out, calm but firm, "back off." The 2 girls turned. They didn't recognize her. Not right away. "This ain't your business, lady," one snapped. Kensley stepped forward slowly. "Maybe not," she said. "But maybe it used to be." There was something in her voice. Not anger, not fear. Authority without force. The 2 aggressors backed down slowly, mumbling as they walked off. Kensley turned to the girl still pressed against the brick wall. Her hoodie was too thin for the cold. Her eyes were wide, wet with held-back tears. "You okay?" Kensley asked. The girl nodded, then looked closer. Her expression shifted. "Wait," she said. Are you the lady from the video? The one from the alley?" Kensley smiled softly. "Guess that depends," she said. "Was that you just now?" The girl let out a shaky breath. "I didn't think anybody would stop." Kensley helped her to her feet. "I did," she said, "and now you know how to do it for someone else." They stood there in the alley, 2 strangers linked by something deeper than luck. "Why'd you do it?" the girl asked. Kensley shrugged. "Because somebody once did it for me, and I remember what it felt like not to be invisible." The girl didn't say anything for a long second. Then, she asked, "Can I talk to you sometime?" Kensley smiled. "I run a place called Light in the Alley. Come by." And just like that, she turned and walked back into the night. No applause, no headlines. Just another circle closed. Just another flame lit. Dignity isn't loud. It doesn't beg for credit. It doesn't fight to be seen. It moves quietly, with purpose, like a whisper that shifts the air in a room long after the noise has stopped. Kensley Monroe didn't ask to be a symbol. She didn't wake up one day and decide to rewrite a narrative. She saw someone in danger and chose to act. Simple as that. But in a world that constantly questions the motives of Black women, especially those without money or status, dignity becomes a kind of rebellion. Because sometimes, the greatest power is doing the right thing, even when nobody believes you, even when they try to break you, even when they strip away your job, your name, your safety, and still, you stand. Dignity looks like keeping your voice calm when they try to silence you. It looks like saying no to the spotlight, and then choosing to use it anyway, when others need your light to see. It looks like walking back into the same alley that tried to swallow you, not to relive the pain but to pass the torch. Kensley didn't build her legacy through fame. She built it by showing up again and again for people who've been told they don't matter. And that's the lesson here. Not just the story of a rescue. Not just the redemption of a billionaire. Not even the launch of a nonprofit. The real lesson is this. You don't have to be rich to be powerful. You don't have to be famous to be remembered. You don't need a stage to make an impact. Sometimes, all it takes is stepping in when nobody else will. So wherever you are, whatever you're facing, remember Kensley's story. The alley wasn't the end. It was the beginning. For her, for others, maybe even for you. Because we all have our moment, the chance to turn the page, to shift the story, to say, this ends with me. This is not just her story. This is a Black story. And this is hidden worth, where voices like Kensley's get the spotlight they deserve. If this story moved you even a little, do one thing. Share it. Not for views, but for the girl out there who still thinks nobody would stop for her. Be the proof that someone will.